I'm Tracy. I'm a product manager at HubSpot and talking today about how you respond to signals and specifically talking about how marketing teams, operations, and sales teams can work better together in this regard. So the first thing that I want to cover is maybe some people know, maybe some people don't, but what do I even mean when I'm saying signals? And you may hear me saying intent signals throughout this or signals. And basically a signal is something meaningful that indicates change. And meaningful is defined by you. What's meaningful to your team that you would want to take action on? These are some examples, like a company that's on your target list raised funding, or a company hired a new executive. There are a lot of triggers, a lot of different types of signals that you could use. The important thing about them is that they are meaningful to you and that they're moments in time that there's something you can act on at the moment it happens. So that's cool. You're like, okay, I either already understood or know what signals are. Like, how do I see them in HubSpot? So HubSpot released native intent signals last year. You start in the buyer intent app and configure them in settings. But once you've configured them, the really cool thing is that they surface basically where you work. So you can see signals on the company and contact records that are associated with them. You can act on them. You can create segments filtering by signals. You can use workflows to trigger things based on signals, etc. They are not a separate tool. They're really embedded in a way that you can take action and that they can be a trigger for something that should happen because this event happened. And I'll paste the usage guide in. We have a usage guide that tells you all about how to use it in HubSpot, and I'll paste that in at the end. So if you have questions, that answers a bunch of them. So now that we understand what signals are, what I'm going to talk about is how we use them. And the interesting thing, I think that the biggest thing to think about is that signals by themselves don't create revenue. When I joined the team internally in HubSpot, I've been at HubSpot for a couple of years, but I joined the team that's working on intent signals last year. And when I first joined the team, I thought, well, this is really cool. Like you can tell when a company raises funding and you can see all these details about it. How neat is that? But what I learned pretty quickly from both working on this and from talking to customers is, yeah, that's cool, but it doesn't really matter. It's what you do with that information that matters. So really, the visibility doesn't mean anything unless you have a mechanism that you can act on that information. And the data by itself, let's say, okay, well, that's cool. I can set an alert. Like if this thing happens, I can alert my salesperson. That's also interesting, but the alert by itself also isn't super useful. You actually need to figure out what behavior change do I want to have in my pipeline, in my group, in my system. What behavior change will happen based on this data? And how will that impact my bottom line? So in both in working in this and talking to a lot of customers, you can implement a system where you have signals where they're visible, but there's a lot of places where they can stall, where things can get stuck through detecting them. Maybe you see the signals, but the reps don't trust them yet. They're a new thing. Like, how do I know that this thing is true? A lot of times signals can be manual, can get lost in the handoffs, or just be too much trouble to handle manually. And then I think this is the challenge of RevOps all the time is alignment, that how our teams actually working together with this. Before I keep going, I'm curious, is there anyone in the breakout here who's already using signals? And if so, do you experience any of these challenges?
Absolutely. Alignment's a massive one.
Yeah. Do you have like specifics of like where you see that alignment breaking down for your org?
Yeah. Well, so it's not my org, it's the people I work with, but it seems like marketing and sales always want to fight on signals and when they should get pushed through and when they shouldn't. So that's always a interesting conversation.
Yeah, I can see that. Everybody has their own goals, but people not working together doesn't like make it a common goal necessarily.
Exactly.
Thank you. Anyone else? Well, cool. I'll keep going, but yeah, feel free to pop off if people have questions or comments. So what I'm going to focus on today is how the different parts of the org you can use signals. And if you are using signals today, then any one of these ways to use it could be really useful. Could really be change results for you. Marketing can use signals, for example, to expand the funnel. Operations can build the signals into infrastructure, and sales can use the signals in a lot of ways for prioritization to have context. So individually, these can all be super useful. When they're compounded and when they're put together is when they become really powerful. And so like to Chris's point, like how do you get everyone to coordinate and align is when you get the full power. So let's start with marketing. One of the problems marketing has is that the majority of the buyer journey happens before you see it. before the customer comes to your website and visits your pricing page, or before they actually fill out that demo request form, they're doing a lot of research. They're figuring out like what is it that I want to know about this topic. And if you wait for that demo request or wait for that visit to your website, then you're actually kind of waiting to be in the fray with every other competitor. You're reacting instead of being proactive. So one of the ways that signals can help is to help you shift to being more proactive in marketing. And the example I'm going to give is one about research intent. So HubSpot has native research intent tool, and there's also multiple third-party research intent tools, which basically tell you when is a company researching a specific topic. They haven't visited your website yet. They haven't filled out a form yet. They're just doing research. I want to know more about accounting software. You can pick up on that and act on it. So in this example, a company that's on your target list, let's say the Connex Digital, is researching accounting software. So that shows up in our intent signals. And this is an example of what the intent signal looks like in HubSpot. And you can see like, oh, this company is newly researching accounting software, and the level at which they're doing it is high. Like, hey, this is maybe somebody I should figure out how to interact with. You can use intent signals in a lot of different ways in HubSpot, and this bottom screenshot is showing that I've configured a segment that at any time that one of the topics I've configured on research intent is surging or the intent level is high, I can create a segment of all those companies so that I can then do something with them. So you might want to reach out to that account early. You want to take some action. And really what you're acting on is that this signal means, they're not going to buy right now, but they're learning about it. What could we do? So in this talk, I'll talk about playbooks. This is not exactly what you should do. These are examples, but really what you want to do with each of these is define a playbook. If I'm going to implement this signal, what am I going to do with it? So if I get a research intent signal on a company that's interesting to me, I could auto add it to a segment, could launch some targeted nurture, like, hey, I have some educational material I could send out. Or if you think, well, outreach is not going to do anything, people put those in, those go straight to spam. Maybe I could add them to a dynamic ad audience so that my material starts showing up for them. And most importantly, you can measure how these accounts perform. So really the signal is helping you shift from being reactive when a customer comes to you to being proactive and engaging before everyone else has seen that the person is interested or the company is interested in that topic. So that's pretty cool. That's a way for marketing to engage and to act early. But then operations really needs to be the one who helps convert that. Like, how do you operationalize that and convert that into something that you can act on? And so a lot of times in operations, the problem can be generally, in this field, people know how to identify high intent accounts in their target markets. But often, okay, I've identified that high intent account. I may even have some signals that are flowing into my system, but I need to then look up information, like what do I do next? So what our customers consistently told us was really signal detection is not their problem. The problem is friction in the workflow. Like, what do they do with that information? And how do you automate it so that signals make it easier to act on the data instead of creating more work? So if the rest think like, oh, this thing is more work than it's worth, like, I don't know what to do with it, then it's not going to be useful. So how do you automate it in a way that makes the action smooth? The example that we'll go through here is a funding signal. So one of your companies of interest raises funding. In this example, you can see the signal triggering in HubSpot that company, MyFirst, announced Series A funding of $8 million. Well, that's pretty cool. Probably triggers some interest in doing something with that company. I've added a screenshot down here how you can actually use signals in workflow triggers. So when a funding signal happens, you could take any of this information and use it as criteria, and then take any action you would take in a workflow on it. So basically, when a signal happens, you want to have some system state change automatically, something that's going to drive the next stage of your funnel. So that really you're turning those into routing logic. Rather than just, oh, this is cool that it happens, you're driving the next step to happen. And so the playbook for this is there's a lot of things you could do when a signal is detected. You could automatically increase a lead score. You could change the life cycle stage so that will trigger the next step in your funnel. You can assign it to someone, create a task for them. And then again, capturing and reporting and understanding how these are working for you is always important. So really you're shifting from signals being informational to signals being part of your infrastructure. to being something that will trigger impact in your bottom line. So that's cool. So you've got the signals. Maybe marketing helped you to get something in your pipeline. Operations is helping the reps see it, but now the reps need to do something with it. So when we think about sales using signals, one of the top reasons to use signals is that if sales is just given static lists, then that's really not up to date. You're not getting information on real-time change. But when they do get signals, they need to trust them. If they see a bunch of signals and they're like, well, that thing triggered, but it's actually not true. Like, how can I trust any of this data if I see a signal that's not true? You have to make sure that what you're seeing is something that can be trusted. And also, the signals need to have context. And the context that comes with the signal, along with the signal itself, makes the whole system valuable. So an example here is we have a signal in HubSpot when a contact changes jobs. So let's say that Brian, who's running this whole conference, Brian changes jobs from Profoundly to some other company. I'm like, dude, Brian's like big HubSpot supporter. I should go see if this other company is using HubSpot, and if not, I need to like ping Brian. So when you see this fake contact, because we in demos can't use real people, when you see that this person started a new job, then you can prioritize. You can actually direct the rep with that information, and they can prioritize timely and contextual outreach. So they can get not only that the person changed job, but information about when and how. So really they can use that signal to change the order of how they prioritize it and do outreach. So really when that type of signal occurs, or when these signals occur in sales, then you can reevaluate, well, did this account become higher in priority for me to deal with? There can also be negative signals, meaning that account could be lowered in priority. And you can surface in workflows, adjust timing, and personalize based on the context included in the signal that you have. And really the shift here is that sales can prioritize based on automation and can be more efficient with their time. But the subcontext is that signals actually give more context to the sales rep than they would have had before with just the name of a company on a list. And that drives confidence in making that outreach. So all three of those pillars, marketing, operations, and sales, any one of those is valuable to use. If you're just getting started, implementing just one of them is just fine. But let's talk about how they compound and work together. And really, when the signals are turned into a system and everything aligns, that's when you get the power. So if you have a signal and the ops process updates a score, and then sales prioritizes outreach based on that score, marketing takes some action based on knowing that that is happening, that's when you get revenue impact. And it's the, you can see my slides, we can talk about examples, we can talk about playbooks. But what I want to show you is an actual customer talking about this. Emily Davidson from Sandler gave out, I think it was an hour-long talk at Inbound last year in 2025. It's a really good talk, and I advise seeing all of it. But I captured a 1-minute clip of it, and I said I wasn't going to do this, but I forgot to share sound when I shared. So one moment. I knew I was supposed to do that when I shared, but we will reshare. Okay. Give me some indication if this still doesn't work, if you can't hear it, but I'll play the clips.
It's always great for us to see the impact as marketers we're having. Getting to see how our wedge of this pie grows has been really, really exciting for us. So being able to see that we went from being, I'd say probably 35% of the funnel in terms of attribution, we are now almost 45%. We're able to see how those conversions are increasing from MQLs to SQLs. We're able to see almost 2 million, if not more at this point, in closed won business as a result of it. And then also just seeing that the number of opportunities is growing. So we started using some of these tools as the year started. So from Q1 to Q2, seeing that 20% growth in opportunities was huge. And again, when we look back at that last slide, it just goes to show that a lot of that would not have originally been in our funnel or on our radar had we not had these buyer intent signals.
So that's pretty powerful. That large of an impact from using signals in a thoughtful way that drives action and drives things from the funnel into revenue. That's pretty amazing. One of the keys is somebody's got to make this happen. And the cool thing is you all are here because you're RevOps folks, largely. So guess what? This is your time to shine. Earlier we were hearing during the panel, like RevOps, possibly the spicy take that RevOps jobs are boring. Like they were just measuring revenue from the funnel. But this is really RevOps team's time to shine, is to be the ones to create order from all of the things going on. So I forgot the person's name who was commenting earlier about the teams not being aligned. This is where you can really step up and get the teams together and help them figure out how do these things come together and create order and create something that is more than the sum of the parts. So really that's it. The bottom line is signals can be very useful. You probably don't need more of them. You need to figure out how to do something with them that matters for your business, so that marketing, operations, and sales can all work together to produce a better result. And that's it.